chapters 21 and 22 of Tom Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. This recording is by Mark Smith of Simpsonville, South Carolina. Tom Swift and His War Tank by Victor Appleton, Chapter 21, A Prisoner. Amos Kanker came to the door of his farmhouse as Ned and Mr. Damon drove up in the runabout. There was an unpleasant grin on the not very prepossessing face of the farmer, and what Ned thought was a cunning look as he slouched out and asked,
"Well, what do you want? Come to smash up any more of my barns at $3,000 a smash?"
"Hardly," answered Ned shortly. "Your prices are too high for such ramshackle barns as you have. Where's Tom Swift?" he asked sharply.
"Huh, you mean that young whippersnapper with his big traction engine?" demanded Mr. Kanker.
"Look here," blustered Mr. Damon. "Tom Swift is neither a whippersnapper nor is his machine a traction engine. It's a war tank."
"That doesn't matter much to me," said the farmer with a grating laugh. "It looks like a traction engine, though it smashes things up more than any one I ever saw."
"That isn't the point," broke in Ned. "Where is my friend Tom Swift? That's what we want to know."
"Huh, what makes you think I can tell you?" demanded Kanker.
"Didn't he come out here?" asked Mr. Damon.
"Not as I knows of," was the surly answer.
"Look here," exclaimed Ned, and his tones were firm, with no bluster nor bluff in them. "We came out here to find Tom Swift, and we're going to find him. We have reason to believe he's here. At least he started for here," he substituted, as he wished to make no statement he could not prove. "Now, we don't claim we have any right to be on your property, and we don't intend to stay here any longer than we can help. But we do claim the right, in common decency, to ask if you have seen anything of Tom. There may have been an accident. There may have been foul play, and there may be international complications in this business. If there are, those involved won't get off as easily as they think. I'd advise you to keep a civil tongue in your head and answer our questions. If we have to get the police and detectives out here, as well as the government Department of Justice, you may have to answer their questions, and they won't be as decent to you as we are."
"Hooray!" whispered Mr. Damon to Ned. "That's the way to talk."
And indeed the forceful remarks of the young bank clerk did appear to have a salutary effect on the surly farmer. His manner changed at once, and his grin faded.
"I don't know nothing about Tom Swift or any of your friends," he said. "I've got my farm work to do, and I do it. It's hard enough to earn a living these war times without taking part in plots. I haven't seen Tom Swift since the trouble he made about my barn."
"Then he hasn't been here today?" asked Ned.
"No, and not for a good many days."
Ned looked at Mr. Damon, and the two exchanged uneasy glances. Tom had certainly started for the Kanker farm, and indeed had come to within a few miles of it. That much was certain, as testified to by a number of residents along the route from Shopton, who had seen the young inventor passing in his car. Now it appeared he had not arrived. The changed air of the farmer seemed to indicate that he was speaking the truth. Mr. Damon and Ned were inclined to believe him. If they had any last, lingering doubts in the matter, they were dispelled when Mr. Kanker said, "You can search the place if you like. I haven't any reason to feel friendly toward you, but I certainly don't want to get into trouble with the government. Look around all you like." "No, we'll take your word for it," said Ned, quickly concluding that now they had got the farmer where they wanted him, they could gain more by an appearance of friendliness than by threats or harsh words. "Then you haven't seen him either?"
"Not a sign of him."
"One thing more," went on Tom's chum, "and then we'll look farther. Weren't you induced by a man named Simpson or one named Blakeson to make the demand of $3,000 damage for your barn?"
"No, it wasn't anybody of either of those names.
admitted Mr. Canker, evidently a bit put out by the question. "It was someone, though, wasn't it?" insisted Ned.
Well, a man did come to me the day the barn was smashed, and just afore it happened, and said an all-fired big traction engine was headed this way, that a young feller who was half crazy was running it. Now, this man, I don't know who he was, being a stranger to me, said if the engine ran into any of my property and did damage, I should collect for it on the spot, or hold the machine. Sure enough, that's what happened, and I did it. That man had an auto, and he brought me and some of my men out to the smashed barn. That's all I know about it."
"I thought someone put you up to it," commented Ned. "This was some of the gang's work," he went on to Mr. Damon. "They hoped to get possession of Tom's tank long enough to find out some of the secrets. By having the Liberty bonds, I fooled 'em."
"That's what you did," said Mr. Damon. "But what can we do now?"
"I don't know," Ned was forced to admit. "But I should think we'd better go back to the last place where he was seen to pass in his auto, and try to get on his trail." Mr. Damon agreed this was a wise plan, and after a casual look around the farmhouse and the other buildings on Canker's Place, and finding nothing to arouse their suspicions, the two left in Ned's speedy little machine. "It is mighty queer," remarked the young bank clerk, as they shot along the country road. "It isn't like Tom to get caught this way."
"Maybe he isn't caught," suggested the other. "Tom has been in many a tight place and gotten out, as you and I well know. Maybe it will be the same now, though it does look suspicious, that fake message coming from you."
"Not coming from me, you mean," corrected Ned. "Well, we'll do the best we can." They proceeded back to where they had last had a trace of Tom and his machine, and there could only confirm what they had learned at first, namely, that the young inventor had departed in the direction of the Canker farm, after having filled his radiator with water and chatting with a farmer he knew. "Then this is where the trail divides," said Ned, as they went back over the road, coming to a point where the highway branched off. "If he went this way, he went to Canker's place, or he would be in the way of going. He isn't there, it seems, and didn't go there."
"If he took the other road, where would he go?" asked Mr. Damon.
"Any one of a dozen places. I guess we'll have to follow the trail and make all the inquiries we can." But from the point where the two roads branched, all trace of Tom Swift was lost. No one had seen him in his machine, though he was known to more than one resident along the highway.
"Well, what are we going to do?"
asked Mr. Damon, after they had traveled some distance, and had obtained no news. "Suppose we call up his house," suggested Ned, as they came to a country store where there was a telephone. "It may be he has returned. In that case, all our worry has gone for nothing."
"I don't believe it has," said Mr. Damon. "But if we call up and ask if Tom is back, it will show we haven't found him, and his father will be more worried than ever."
"We can ask the telephone girl, and tell her to keep quiet about it," decided Ned, and this they did. But the answer that came back over the wire was discouraging, for Tom had not returned, and there was no word from him. There was an urgent message for him, too, from government officials regarding the tank, the girl reported. "Well, we've just got to find him, that's all," declared Ned. "I guess we'll have to make a regular search of it. I did hope we'd find him out at the Canker farm, but since he isn't there, nor anywhere about, as far as we can tell, we've got to try some other plan."
"You mean notify the authorities?" asked Mr. Damon.
"Hardly that, yet. But I'll get some of Tom's friends who have machines, and we'll start them out on the trail. In that way we can cover a lot of ground." Late that afternoon, and far into the night, a number of the friends of Tom and Ned went about the country in automobiles, seeking news of the young inventor. Mr. Swift became very anxious over the non-return of his son, and felt the authorities should be notified. But, as all agreed that the local police could not handle the matter, and that it would have to be put into the hands of the United States Secret Service, he consented to wait for a while before doing this. All the next day the search was kept up, and Ned and Mr. Damon were getting discouraged, not to say alarmed, when, most unexpectedly, they received a clue. They had been traveling around the country on little frequented roads in the hopes that perhaps Tom might have taken one and disabled his machine so that he was unable to proceed. "Though in that case he could and would have sent word," said Ned.
"Unless he's hurt,"
suggested Mr. Damon. "Well, maybe that is what's happened," Ned was saying when they noticed coming toward them a very much dilapidated automobile, driven by a farmer, and on the seat beside him was a small barefoot boy.
"Which is the nearest road to Shopton?" asked the man, bringing his wheezing machine to a stop.
"Who are you looking for in Shopton?" asked Ned, while a strange feeling came over him that, somehow or other, Tom was concerned in the question.
"I'm looking for friends of a Tom Swift," was the answer.
"Tom Swift? Where is he? What happened to him?" cried Ned.
"Bless my dyspepsia tablets!" exclaimed Mr. Damon. "Do you know where he is?"
"Not exactly," answered the farmer, "but here's a note from someone that signs himself Tom Swift, and it says he's a prisoner."
End of Chapter 21. Chapter 22. Rescued. For a moment Ned and Mr. Damon gazed at the farmer in his rattletrap of an automobile, and then they looked at the fluttering piece of paper in his hand. Thence their gaze traveled to the ragged and barefoot lad sitting beside the farmer. "I found it," announced the boy. "Found what?" asked Ned. "That there note." Without asking any more questions, reserving them until they knew more about the matter, Mr. Damon and Ned each reached out a hand for the paper the farmer held. The latter handed it to Ned, being nearest him, and at a sight of the handwriting the young bank clerk exclaimed, "It's from Tom, all right."
"What happened to him?"
cried Mr. Damon.
"Where is he? Is he a prisoner?"
"So it seems," answered Ned. "Wait, I'll read it to you." And he read, "Whoever picks this up, please send word at once to Mr. Swift or to Ned Newton in Shopton, or to Mr. Damon of Waterfield. I am a prisoner, locked in the old factory. Tom Swift."
"Bless my quinine pills!" cried Mr. Damon. "What in the world does it mean? What factory?"
"That's just what we've got to find out," decided Ned. "Where did you get this?" he asked the farmer's boy. "Way off over there," and he pointed across miles of fields. "I was looking for a lost cow, and I went past an old factory. There wasn't nobody in the place, as far as I knowed, but all at once I heard someone yell, and then I seen something white, like a bird, sail out of a high window. I was scared for a minute, thinking it might be tramps after me."
"And what did you do, sonny?"
asked Mr. Damon as the boy paused. "Well, after a while I went to where the white thing lay, and I picked it up. I seen it was a piece of paper with writing on it, and it was wrapped around part of a brick." "And did you go near the factory to find out who called, or who threw the paper out?" Ned queried. "I didn't," the boy answered. "I was scared. I went home and didn't even start to find the lost cow."
"No more he did," chimed in the farmer. "He come running in like a whitehead, and soon as I saw the paper and heard what Bub had to say, I thought maybe I'd better do something."
"Did you go to the factory?" asked Ned eagerly.
"No, I thought the best thing to do would be to find this Mr. Swift or the other folks mentioned in this letter. I knowed in a general way where Shopton was, but I'd never been there, doing my trading in the other direction, and so I had to stop and ask the road. If you can tell me—"
"We're two of the persons spoken of in that note,"
said Mr. Damon, as he mentioned his name and introduced Ned.
"We have been looking for our friend Tom Swift for 2 days now. We must find him at once, as there is no telling what he may be suffering." "Where is this old factory you speak of?" continued Mr. Damon. "And how can we get there? It's too bad one of you didn't go back, after finding the note, to tell Tom he was soon to be rescued."
"Well, maybe it is," said the farmer. a bit put out by the criticism. "But I figured it would be better to look up this young man's friends and let them do the rescuing, and not lose no time, especially as it's about as far from my place to the factory as it is to Shopton."
"Well, I suppose that's so," agreed Ned. "But where is this factory?"
"It's an old one where they started to make beet sugar, but it didn't pan out," the farmer said. "The place is in ruins, and I did hear, not long ago, that somebody run a threshing machine through it, and busted it up worse than before."
"Great horned toads!" cried Ned. "That must be the very factory Tom ran his tank through, and to think he should be a prisoner there."
"Held by whom, do you suppose?" asked Mr. Damon.
"By that Blakeson gang, I imagine," Ned answered. "There's no time to lose. We must go to his rescue."
"Of course," agreed Mr. Damon. "We're much obliged to you for bringing this note," he went on to the farmer. "And here is something to repay you for your trouble," and he took out his wallet.
"Shucks, I don't do this for pay," objected the farmer. "It's a pity I wouldn't help anybody what's in trouble. If I'd 'a' knowed what it meant, me and Bub here would 'a' gone to the factory ourselves, maybe, and done the work quicker. But I didn't know, what with war times and such like, but that it would be better to deliver the note."
"It turns out as well, perhaps," agreed Ned. "We'll look after Tom now."
"And I'll come along and help," said the farmer. "If there's a gang of tramps in that factory, you may need some reinforcements. I got a couple of new axe handles in my machine, and they'll come in mighty handy as clubs."
"That's so," said Mr. Damon. "But I fancy Tom is simply locked in the deserted factory office with no one on guard. We can get him out once we get there, and we'll be glad to have you come with us. So if you won't take any reward, maybe your boy will, as he found the note." And Mr. Damon pressed some bills into the hands of the boy, who, it is needless to say, was glad to get them. It was a run of several miles back to the deserted factory, and though they passed houses on the way, it was decided that no addition to their force was necessary, though they did stop at a blacksmith shop, where they borrowed a heavy sledge to batter down a door, if such action should be needed. The farmer's rattle-trap of a car, in spite of its appearance, was not too far behind Ned's runabout, and in a comparatively short time all were within sight of the ruined place, a ruin made more complete by the passage through it of Tom Swift's war tank. "And to think of his being there all this while!" exclaimed Mr. Damon, as he and Ned leaped from their machine.
"If he only is there!" murmured the bank clerk.
"What do you mean? Didn't the note he threw out say he was there?"
"Yes, but something may have happened in the meanwhile. Those plotters, if they do a thing like this, are capable of anything. They may have kidnapped Tom again." "Anyway, we'll soon find out," murmured Ned as they advanced toward the ruin, Mr. Damon and the farmer each armed with an axe helve, while Ned carried the blacksmith's sledge. They went into the end of the factory that was less ruined than the central part, where the tank had crashed through, and made their way into what had been the office, the place where they had found the burned scraps of paper. "Hark!" exclaimed Ned, as they climbed up the broken steps. "I heard a noise." "It's him yelling, like he did afore he threw out the note," said the boy. Then, as they listened, they heard a distant voice calling, "Hello! Hello there! If that is any friend of mine, let me out, or send word to Mr. Damon or Ned Newton. Hello!" "Hello yourself, Tom Swift!" yelled Ned, too delighted to wait for any other confirmation that it was his friend who was shouting. "We've come to rescue you, Tom!" There was a moment of silence, and then a voice asked, "Who's there?" "Ned Newton, Mr. Damon, and some other friends of yours," answered the young bank clerk, for surely the farmer and his son could be called Tom's friends. An indistinguishable answer came back, and then Ned cried, "Where are you, Tom? Tell us so we can get you out." They all listened and faintly heard, "I'm in some sort of an old vault, partly underground. It's below what used to be the office. There's a flight of steps, but be careful, as they're rotten." Eagerly they looked around. Mr. Damon saw a door in one corner of the office and tried to open it. It was locked, but a few blows from the sledge smashed it, and then some steps were revealed. Down these, using due caution, went Ned and the others, and at the bottom they came upon another door. This was of sheet iron, and was fastened on the outside by a big padlock. "Stand back!" cried Ned as he swung the sledge, and with a few blows broke the lock to pieces. Then they pulled open the door, and into the light staggered Tom Swift, a most woebegone figure, and showing the effects of his imprisonment. But he was safe and unharmed, though much disheveled from his attempts to escape. "Thank Heaven you've come!" he murmured as he clasped Ned's hand. "Is the tank all right?" "All right!" cried Ned. "And now tell us about yourself. How in the world did you get here?" "It's quite a yarn," answered Tom. "I've got to pull myself together before I answer." And he sank wearily down on a step, looking very haggard and worn. End of chapter.